getting to sex quickly is not always as enjoyable for men either, right? Like if I'm really in a sexual mood, right? I'm really feeling turned on, which I believe one of your buddies said, oh, it's because he has low T. I've gotten my T levels checked. Okay. I'm doing all right. Right. Dude, you guys seriously cracked me up. If you guys did not see Marcus's response to the first debate, make your way to his YouTube channel and watch it. It was good. It was funny. Um, but no, like, here's the thing. If I'm really in the mood and I'm ready to go, let's go. Let's do it. I'm all for it. Whether I have to handle logistics or whether I have to pump buying temperature or both, right? I'm down. But as a 41-year-old man, as somebody who's kind of run the gauntlet of different experiences, I genuinely appreciate the game. I genuinely appreciate the chase. I love the buildup. It's the moment, like watching it all unfold in real time, right? As if we're a god watching reality unfold and we're having a hand in the interaction. And, that's what grinds my gears. Don't get me wrong, the actual act of sex itself and all the, things that go with it, including some sex that's maybe a little bit more deviant, as you're alluding to. If the woman's up for it, sure. It's not really my thing. I'm not really into like tying women up and whipping them and inflicting pain on them and so forth. But I like, most guys, I'm a fan of sex that's maybe a little bit more dominant, a little rougher, right? A little more selfish and some consensual objectifying, right? But the lead up, the build up to that is oftentimes just as good as the climax, right? We don't want to just get to the climax of a movie. We want to build up. We want to learn the characters. We want tension and then relief of tension and then a conclusion, right? So I'm interested more in the storyline and the totality of it. And I found that the majority of women also come from that frame. You can call it a feminine frame if you want to, or you can call it a frame of a guy who's uh, not as obsessed about sex as he maybe once was in his younger years.
Um, so help me understand it. So one of the reasons you say that you should wait for sex is if you don't want to have sex, basically.
I don't think that we should wait for sex. I'm sorry, I have to correct your word choice here. Okay. I think if a guy is very sexual and the woman is very sexual and he wants to get to sex quickly and he can do it in a non offensive, consensual way, which everything you've said so far tells me you're doing that. Let me just clarify, right? If a guy wants to do that, do that. I just don't think it's the most effective style of game the majority of the time, regardless of how tight your game is. It's generally better to play what we call solid game, which means we don't jump through escalation windows as soon as they crack open. We want that escalation window to open all the way. If a guy wants to try to make it open faster, so be it. But we pass through the escalation window when the escalation window wants to be passed through, not when we want to go through it. Right. So,
Yeah, I just think we're circling a little bit here because what it sounds like you're saying is um, if you're able to like fast escalate and you're able to get at that point and you're able to do it, then like that's great. Like you should be able to do that. And my point is you can and it's teachable and we do it. Um, so I don't understand why we wouldn't. Like
So
how
once
is it
again, though,
difficult not
once
to?
again, I do believe it's a skill and I do believe it's relatively advanced. I don't think most guys can pull women quickly. Um, but the question is, there's a burn rate either way, right? We've talked about that. If you slow it down too much and you do what I'm proposing, which is sort of being more about the totality of the experience, really taking your time and letting anticipation build up. There's a burn rate. You're going to lose some women who are like, oh man, I just want to get fucked, right? But there's a burn rate with the style of game that you're playing as well. And the question is, which style has a higher burn rate?
Not, yeah, yeah, I disagree. I think there's burn rate on my style if you're not doing it correctly. So I think there's a learning phase to this. As you learn it, there's going to be a burn rate, of course, just like anything. As I said, like if I golf about 3 times a year. All right. Now, if I
But
was
I
to
already
take
agreed
some
with that
training with
point.
golf,
I already agreed with that point. I
yeah, okay. So
agree.
let's say you get to the point that it is advanced. Let's say you get to the point that it is good. I think there's
Okay.
much less of a churn rate. Like much, I wouldn't. It's negligible. I think you're way better off escalating a little quicker because, as I said, when you don't, you face all those concerns, but also you're missing out on the attraction triggers. You're actually building more attraction doing it this way. Because if you're the type of man that can escalate quickly, which means you can build attraction quickly, you can show sexual desire, you can show that you can lead, you can show you the, if you can do all these things, you're actually showing a lot more attraction triggers here than if you to play it a little bit more slow. You're showing less there. So I think not only do you have girls that are going to be more likely to see you and stay with you because you have amazing sexual experiences, but you also don't lose the girls that think it's too slow or think it's a little bit too platonic or boring is too strong of a word, but a little bit too platonic. Then yeah, I think like it's pretty clear to me what's going to
You
be optimal here.
you are definitely demonstrating to the woman that you are an attractive, able-bodied man when you can sexually escalate quickly. Sexual sex is a compelling experience. It is. And if you can get a woman to sex quickly and in a calibrated way where she feels good about it and everything, there's certainly a boost of attraction that can happen from that. But hear me really closely on this one. We have my desires in my head. We have the woman's desires in her head. The more closely I can bridge the gap between those two, the more her attraction will boost because now I'm demonstrating an extreme level of calibration to her. And it's not always fast. If my desire is to do it fast, her desire is to do it fast, and I can bridge that gap and I can do it fast in a calibrated way, certainly compelling experience, sex, emotions, physical sensations, things that she doesn't normally experience, right? But if she's not as receptive or open to it, or if we're in a social environment, when I can, carefully seed the sexual tension and I can sort of dance around the objections without having to handle them so directly, I can indirectly bridge that gap and we can hook up. And it's not always as fast as possible. It's similar to kissing a woman as fast as possible. Kissing a woman well can boost attraction. But if we kiss her too soon, regardless of how good our kissing technique is, it can make her attraction levels actually go down. We want to kiss her at the right time. We want as much as possible to not hit the ball past the hole or before the hole, like you said in the golfing analogy. You want to try to get it in the fucking hole, right?
Okay, so I
So
have a question for you then. If you're 30 minutes in interaction, okay, and you can now kiss this girl in a way that builds attraction and builds sexual tension, would you do it or would you always tell people to wait a little bit longer?
So once again, I have done this, okay? I have gotten fast makeouts many a time, all right? It's not always the right move to make. It's not.
But what makes it not the right move?
If the woman feels like I'm capitalizing on a high moment, right? So if I go in and I flirt with her and I build her attraction up and then I kind of seize the kiss because I see an in, that can make her feel like, okay, he's one of these guys that seizes the moment, right? Similar to going for a phone number too fast. You see this syndrome where a guy will chat a girl up for a minute, get a few smiles, and then he pulls out his phone. He's like, what's your Instagram? It's like, dude, you didn't have to
But
go for a
what makes
60
it too
second
fast?
Instagram close, right?
What made that Instagram close too fast?
It could be a bunch of different things, many different variables.
I guess the point I'm making out here is time is arbitrary. When we're saying too fast, we're not looking at the watch, right? We're looking at the girl's response or our response. Like you even said there, what made the kiss too fast was the fact that, oh, we were seizing an opportunity. So the moment we could get something, we took it and it felt needy. It sounds like what you're saying. Like it felt like we were just
I was
like
giving you one
eager and
example. I was giving you one example of a kiss that could go awry.
yeah, but it sounds like each time you give these explanations, it's not actually a factor of time per se. It's just a factor of like how much compliance we have, right?
Well, look, I do believe time is relative, in the sense that what's fast for one woman is not fast for another, certainly.
I agree. Yeah. So my point here is I'm never looking at time really, right? I'm not sitting here and being like, oh, you have to wait this amount of time. Do not hook up with a girl within X amount of time. Do not go for a number with X amount of time. Do not sleep with a girl within X amount of time. It
Neither am
seems like
I.
what you're teaching is you have to hook up with a girl in this time. What
No,
I'm saying is like time here for me is arbitrary. I'm looking at compliance. And so like what I'm looking to do is how can I move everything towards sex as quick as possible in a way that doesn't ruin the interaction. So that's all I'm looking to do. If I can build more attraction, if I can build more sexual tension, if I can get over objections in a way that doesn't make me sound needy or look eager or look, because I agree with you, that kiss is probably really bad. Like for me personally, I don't make out with girls until I'm having sex or until afterwards. I think a lot of guys fuck up with that. But that's not a function of time. That's a function of what the kiss means. If the kiss, for example, if you're doing it in a way where you're just trying to get pleasure from her. It's not about her. You're just trying to make out because one, it feels nice, it's validating, the girl notices that. It's always horrible. Now, there are ways where you can kiss, where you make out for a little bit, maybe you show some dominance, you grab her hair, and then you pull back and you tell her, like, that's all you get, or not here. That's a way where you can escalate while making a chase and you're not being needy. The same way that you can dirty talk her and then at the end be like, hey, but not here, right? Behave. You can do it in a way where you build escalation, but then you remove all that chasing aspect. So yeah, to me, it's just not time is arbitrary. It's just what you're doing with the compliance you have, and you want to build compliance as quick as possible.
So I have to disagree with the way that you've characterized my argument, though. I'm not saying that guys
Okay.
should wait this long. They should slow it down. They should wait X amount of time. They should do this and that, right? I'm saying, generally speaking, these are the timelines. For example, if you're going to hook up with a woman fast, it generally doesn't happen in 2 hours. It happens in closer to 4 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours. You're going to meet her. You're going to interact with her a bit. You're going to go back to her place or your place. You're going to schmooze a little bit, and then you're going to get to hooking up. I'm not saying the 2 hour time frame doesn't happen and that you know what I mean? It happens, but it's not the norm. So
Okay.
what I'm a
What?
fan of is teaching guys a comprehensive system where we look at sort of some averages, and then a guy can optimize the style that's best for him. So if a guy wants to play the style of game where he tries to get a girl to go home within a matter of few hours, and he speaks very overtly about sex, and he speaks very overtly about what he's going to do to her, like tie her up and shit like that, fine. Optimize that if you want to, but there's going to be a burn rate that comes with that that is relatively high. So I'm not saying guys should do it my way. I'm saying these are the parameters that I've found to be optimal, not only for the woman's satisfaction, but also for my satisfaction. I mean, there are times where I can take a woman home and I'm ready to go in a couple hours. Okay. It's not
So
always the case though.
if if I was to tell you in Brazil, the hookup data there is most people that go on dates have sex within 2 hours. In Brazil, if you had a student, would you tell him like, yeah, 2 hours is a good amount of time?
I don't think that is the data.
No, no, no. Sorry. Like hypothetically, if like there's a place in the
Hypothetically,
world. Yeah.
if a student went to Brazil and hypothetically the data said that women were down to hook up in 2 hours, would I recommend that he does it? I don't know. I
Yeah.
would just tell him this is what the statistics are. So if you go longer than that, if you go too far outside that window, you may run the risk of losing her because you're not being sexual enough, you're not moving things forward, so forth. If you try to do it faster than that in like 30 minutes or an hour, you could be, triggering some resistance. This is what the average is in Brazil, according to the data, according to whoever's experience. So I would tell them what the data is, and then I would say, let's optimize a style of game that we think is going to work and this also feels best for you. That's how I would
Yeah.
take
So
that.
yeah, I disagree with this. Like I feel basically what I would do
Can I
is
sh-
I
can I
would
say
look
one more
at
thing?
all the data. Yeah, sure.
No, you know what? Go ahead. Go ahead.
I would look at all the data, right, of what every guy is doing, and I would almost do the opposite, right? Like if you had to tell me, like, hey, Marcus, you got a student, would you tell him to like look what everyone else is doing in the club and to replicate that? That is the last thing I would want a guy to do. Holy fuck. Like
Mm-hmm.
well,
Mm-hmm.
all this data that we're looking at is on normies, right? We have to remember the data we're looking at is for guys with an average leg count of four, right? So, or 4 to 7, I think it is in America, right? Like, I don't want to look to guys that have slept with 5 girls before in their life and think, how long does it take them to sleep with a girl? And how often should that look like for me? Um, yeah, I think you're just probably going off bad data or your own data, which is fine. But if you're just looking at your data, as I said, there's people out there like myself, Alex Swift, that have a style of game that I think is more optimal and is different. And so if you say you're not recommending it, but I mean, you're saying it's optimal. It sounds like you are recommending. It sounds like it's what you teach. Is yeah, the time is arbitrary. I think like if you were to look to someone else, and if I was to see data, like if there was a guy out there, for example, um, that was closing more often than me, that was building more attraction than me, that was like getting over objections more easily, I just changed my style of game. Like this is like what I've consistently done. And I've done this over time. Like when I first met David Swift, he wasn't a part of UMP to begin with. He came and joined us. His text game, I completely changed how I was texting. I used to be the type of guy that say texting doesn't matter. You just meet a girl, and as long as you have a good interaction, you just message. It's just a bridge to meet her again. I couldn't have been more wrong about that. I've completely changed the style of text to build more attraction, to show more sexual escalation, to be able to deal with objections over text. And now you can have girls that come straight over to my place. So yeah, I guess if I was back then, I would look at my game and say like, okay, this way. But as soon as I see with someone else with different data that's better, I'm going to change it. And I think the problem is like there are people out there with different data that can close quicker with less churn rate and less failure. It's just a matter of like if you can adjust to that is like what I think.
So here's the problem that I see. Okay. The problem that I see is the majority of coaches are optimizing a style of game that works well for them, and then they're teaching guys their optimized style. This is how I do it, therefore you can do it too, right? And there's certainly some truth to that, right? What I'm about is teaching guys a comprehensive understanding of the game, and then also teaching them my style of game, and then helping them form a style of game that's going to work best for them. So I see you, forgive me, as falling into the category of many other coaches in our industry who have optimized one system or a few systems, and that's kind of it. And if I may do a quick shameless self promotion here, I do believe that I have created the most comprehensive, customizable super system that's ever been created. The vortex of love, I call it. So uh, I am not just teaching guys my style of game. I am teaching guys a comprehensive, customizable super system, and then allowing them to pick and choose what works best for them. If there's something that's definitely not going to work, I'm going to point it out. And then if there's some kind of recommendation that I have for them based on my own style of game, I'll make that recommendation. So no, I don't agree with how you've characterized